Alright, guys. Welcome to another edition of Tito.tv. And of course, right now we got 7 days to die, and we're going to be on Try 20 still. We're on episode like 33 or part 33. So, and as we get things ready to go, I just want to tell everybody, I hope they had a great weekend, and hopefully you'll have a great start to your week. And we're going to go ahead and get our post out on X, and then we're going to go ahead and start going, and we'll probably be getting it going by the next 3 minutes. Okay, guys. We're now out. Post. I can't remember if I replied, but I don't think I did. I don't think I went to and never did. I just got better yesterday, so I was sick for like 10 days. And then, like 2, 3 days ago, the old lady ended up getting it. So, it's been fucking bad. And the shit I was coughing up was similar to like glue. And, safety's still kind of in there, but I mean, I'm good. Like, I felt like I had the flu, but at the same time, I was really just coughing. And all my muscles were aching and quaking. I couldn't sleep. Yeah, it was shitty. And then, of course, I had to cough through the cold type thing, too. So it was like, fuck. But I pulled ass out. I had to take a whole week off, basically, to recuperate and to be able to, you know what I'm saying, function. But, yeah. And, like, to catch up on everything, shit. As far as everything, we had so much scatter shit, and me and you so real bad about texting so long. Shit, I ain't no better, so I can't say nothing. But try to keep it simple here. We'll keep everything away from the negative talks. Because one thing I've learned is the more positivity you put in your life, man, and the more that you bring it around, the better off it is. So, like, basically what I'm saying is if you fucks with me, and every time you fucks with me, I'm trying to make you laugh, or I'm trying to be positive, it's going down, rub off on you, just as if negative would to rub off on you if you hit me up, and I'm like, good, life's up, you know. But pretty much the long ass message to tell you absolutely nothing. But we'll touch on one thing. I guess like working, like you were saying, though, I do remember that how it could be really good, but kind of fuck you over. But I do have the motivation to be able to get up, get up, get up. The only thing that holds me back. I can't remember if I But I can usually get up, grind, do whatever, show up at any time, and still grind out. But like being that like I get down so hurt now, like muscle wise and all this bullshit, cause I guess they want they ain't diagnosing me with nothing, but I'm thinking now they down diagnosed my mama and all that, and they want me to get in there for testing, but she got like lupus, and they're saying it's hereditary. So basically, I've got like an autoimmune, and that's what's been wrong with me the whole time. But I was screaming, "Hey, bro, something ain't right," like. Everybody else is like, taking the prescription pain pills, like, for whatever. And I'm over here like, bro, I just need this shit for my fucking pain. Like, so then I figured out, hey, take this and this will work, Because, like, for an example, like, a lot of people on Suboxone. But I noticed I can just get fucking high as shit on Suboxone. That's what I noticed. So I didn't want no part of that. I don't like feeling like I'm on a Xanny or, I just need to feel no pain so I can get on and do what I need to do. Whether it's work, play, make people laugh. Because if I'm not happy, no one else can be happy around me because I'm not going to be able to help them. I'm not going to be able to be that beacon of positivity that I was speaking of. But now, lately, shit, man, if possible, I try to bring that positivity in anywhere and everywhere I go now because, like, for an example, even on politics where people try to talk and they start arguing, it's like, bro, you don't know shit, really. So just, hear somebody's opinion. You don't have to agree with it, but I think it's cool to at least hear people out. But at the end of the day, man, I just feel like that's the biggest change from me. And I've always been pretty positive, but now I'm like headstrong about it, And I think one of the other bigger things is taking all these ideas that I've always, had, and not so much sit on them, but start to actually try to push these ideas that I have actually forward, and maybe put more effort into that to try to tie it back to certain other things. At the end of the day, there's only so much time in a day, but with my ADD or ADHD, I want to try to get a better hold on it. I want to get like a better idea of like, okay, I'm looking at a schedule, and this doesn't have to exactly go that schedule, but I'd like to check some things off on it, And I think that's the biggest thing that I'm focusing on in my life right now. It's just like I'm 30-something years old, you know what I'm saying? I feel like there's a lot of disarray when it comes to like planning. It's like, I plan to do something, but don't mean it's going to happen, but that's because I got to work on myself a little bit, I can go and do anything most people ask me to do, but, when I tell myself to go do something, I don't know, procrastinate, excuses. Bro, this shirt is cool as fuck. That's all I gotta say for today. Bro, this shirt is cool as fuck.
Random facts about girls. The last.
Alright, guys, we're going to have some background news going on. We're going to go ahead and get started.
we'll be sure to get into that. And then increasing concerns of a broader escalation, even more here. This one between Israel and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So let's get into it. Recording this at 8 a.m. Central on Sunday, February 4th, 2024. So we're starting to get our first BDA, or battle damage assessments, really coming out of the Syrian
BDA, battle damage assessment.
Iraq and Syria against Iranian-backed militias a couple days ago. Still kind of scattered, and nothing official from the United States government, and nothing really from Iran. More on that in a second. What we did get was a statement from the Popular Mobilization Forces. They say that in the Al-Qaim district in western Iraq, the U.S. aggression resulted in the death of 16 martyrs, the injury of 36 others, while the search is still ongoing for the bodies of a number of missing. This was an interesting group to put this out, right? Still haven't seen anything officially for the Islamic resistance in Iraq, who is constantly claiming the attacks against U.S. forces. The Popular Mobilization Forces is an official part of the Iraqi government. We have partnered with the Popular Mobilization Forces in the ongoing fight against Islamic State. So coming from this organization, and there's a lot of politics to be played here, there's a lot of groups within the PMF pushing for the United States to leave Iraq entirely. So there are some politics at play here. Coming from the PMF, this makes it look like the United States struck our allies. Like we went after forces that we have been fighting alongside for quite a while now. So it's worth mentioning that we're not inside of the Popular Mobilization Forces, and I understand this is confusing. There are so many umbrella groups here that it's kind of the goal in a lot of ways to have made this confusing, and Iran did it in so many different ways. Kataib Hezbollah is part of the Popular Mobilization Forces. They man at least two of the brigades, I think 45th and 46th. Harakat Hezbollah al-Nujaba, one of the major organizations that just the other day said we are not going to stop attacks against American forces until they leave Iraq entirely. They are referred to as the 12th Brigade, unofficially. 12th Brigade of what? 12th Brigade of the Popular Mobilization Forces. So the PMF is complicated and messy. But anyways, the first official statement that I've seen talking about potential deaths from the U.S. strikes in Iraq and Syria are coming from the PMF. We did get a statement additionally from Kataib Hezbollah saying that what our children were exposed to at Al-Qaim and the brutality it approached is not strange to America. And it was the one who destroyed cities on the heads of their residents in Japan and is still practicing and supporting these crimes in Gaza. Kind of the expected statement from Kataib Hezbollah there. Now, I haven't seen anything, there's been some rumors, and I'll say unofficial reports, over the past 24, 48 hours of continued strikes against U.S. forces and U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria since this large wave of attacks took place. I have not seen those claims by any of these groups. There's usually a little bit of a delay, but the Islamic resistance is pretty quick to say, we did that. We carried out a strike here or there. They haven't done that yet. So for the probably 3 or 4 different reports of strikes against U.S. facilities in Iraq and Syria, take out the grain of salt. It wouldn't be shocking if those kicked off again. From the groups that would have carried those out. And then shifting over to Iran and their statements, I did see some mixed messaging from some very unofficial accounts suggesting that a number of Iranians were killed in the series of strikes. But it was so off the radar that I'm not comfortable presenting that quite yet. Not much like at all. So the ambassador to Syria yesterday said that no Iranian positions were targeted at all. Instead, the focus of the strikes was to destroy the civil infrastructure of Syria and to offset the defeat of Israel in Gaza and to support and arm Islamic State militants in the region. So that's always interesting when Israel or when Iran goes that route. The U.S. strikes against the militia groups that are attacking U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria and have very strong that is actually what you're doing is degrading Syrian society and helping to and trying to facilitate the arming and equipping of the state. Now, in terms of facilities destroyed, there's been some satellite imagery that has come out. The War Zone did a really good job showing those. And this is hard to dial in at this point because a lot of this is public. We don't know the exact a lot of these strikes. What they did at War Zone was dialed into a known ammo storage facility, an area that has been hit over and over over the course of the past few years. Kind of an open secret, if you will. and they were able to pull satellite imagery from before and after the strike that I'll pull up on screen here. It's kind of hard to tell at this distance, but you can definitely see some char marks. Definitely see in the image on the right that some of those buildings have been destroyed, caved in, and nothing remains there any longer. So this also, I think, does a good job of showing the difference in what we talked about yesterday when the U.S. said that they struck, multiple locations with, I think it was 85 targets with 125 different munitions, right? So what we're looking at right here could be one location with 15 different targets hit with 30 different munitions. So it just shows how many individual locations were like this struck throughout. And there were some terms thrown around in I saw yesterday, carpet bombing. Not what this was. Carpet bombing, think of it like laying carpet over an area, it just hits everything. Even an area like this with a lot of targets in a small location, each one of those would have been programmed, likely with some sort of GPS-guided munition, to strike a specific target. This is not the case in the U.S. You can destroy everything in a one-by-one box. Each munition is going to go through when ammunition is going to go directly through the roof that it is designed to target. They're not dropping 30 bombs around hoping that one of them hits. Now, shifting down to Yemen, the Houthis, the Red Sea, nothing has stopped there. I wouldn't say at this point that it has increased, but it definitely hasn't decreased. So, just over the last 48 hours, on February 2nd, the USS Hardy engaged and shot down one unmanned aerial vehicle UAV over the Gulf States. No injuries or reported. That's the case for all of these that we're looking here. Also, on February 2nd, U.S. forces conducted strikes against 4 Houthi UAVs that were prepared to launch preemptive strikes, in a sense, if you will. And then the night of the 2nd, USS Laboon and FA-18s from the Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group engaged and shot down 7 more drones over the Red Sea. Busy day on February 2nd. Fortunately, didn't really see anything on February 3rd. But then on February 4th, just earlier today, U.S. forces conducted a strike in self-defense against a Houthi anti-ship cruise missile prepared to launch into ships in the Red Sea. So, 4 shoot-downs or preemptive strikes carried out by the United States against the Houthis just in the last, 48 hours? So, hard to say at this point that the Houthis have been effectively deterred.
I gotta take a crap.
Is the third wave of U.S. and U.K. strikes carried out against Houthi targets across Yemen. According to U.S. officials and the U.K. Defense Ministry, various assets struck 36 Houthi targets in 13 different locations. These were carried out by U.S. FA-18s from the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group and British Typhoon fighter aircraft, as well as the USS Gravely and USS Carney firing Tomahawk cruise missiles from the Red Sea. So a varied attack, air and sea. Of course, the U.S. Put out as well that this was supported by Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Denmark, the Netherlands, and New Zealand. So multinational coalition trying to stop the Houthis from continuing to carry out the strikes in the Red Sea. The U.S. says that the targets included multiple underground storage facilities, command and control centers, missile systems, UAV storage and operation sites, radars, and helicopters. I don't think I've seen helicopters mentioned in previous strikes, but we have seen the Houthi use of those helicopters in capturing the Galaxy Leader. Remember that raid that the Houthis carried out, landing their fighters on the Galaxy Leader and seizing that ship and moving it back into Houthi-controlled territory. Now, the Houthis did confirm most of this, for the most part. They said that the American-British aggression aircraft launched 48 strikes during the past hours. They say that these strikes will not deter us from our moral, religious, and humanitarian stance in support of the steadfast Palestinian people on the Gaza Strip.
Sail is a sail, even if it's to a scumbag like you.
Released some images and videos, like over an hour's worth, from a military exercise that they refer to as Yemen is the support of Palestine. So we're starting to see a lot more of these Houthi military training videos and images. What this one showed was, again, soldiers on the ground. And I want to reiterate that the major concern with the Houthis, the biggest threat that they pose to the Red Sea, the Gulf States, the U.S., UK, and all the allies in the region, it's not their ground forces. It's their missile and drone force. So it's interesting that a lot of what we're seeing right now are the soldiers on the ground, not really, all things considered, the largest threat. But either way, what they showed here was what appears to have been a practicing of a raid against an Israeli settlement, if you will. So they've got this small little group of buildings outfitted with Israeli flags, and they had a ground force move in, blow up a couple areas, capture some people. I mean, it looks very much like what Hamas carried out in Israel on October 7th in a lot of ways, right? They move in, they capture prisoners, hostages, move them back out, and then they detonate as they exit, destroying the rest of the building. So anyways, Houthis continue to train and show their military capabilities, and they are coming under increasing pressure from the U.S. and UK aircraft and missiles in the region. And turning back to Israel, there's just every day now, there's more and more news kind of hinting at a broader war between Israel and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Some articles coming out just in the last couple of days saying that we're closer to war now than we have ever. By ever, they mean since, Hamas kicked off their attack on October 7th. So, really, the tensions here mounted, or kicked off, I should say, this wave between Hezbollah and Israel on October 8th. They waited a full day after the Hamas attack. Since then, official reports that 15 Israelis have been killed, along with 170.
Sale is a sale, even if it's to a scumbag like you.
Now, Israel, over the course of the last month or so here, has added an estimated 60,000 troops, which is pretty significant, given the ongoing war in Gaza and the focus in Gaza right now, and all of the goals of the war there that have not yet been achieved. Right? There's and there's things happening on a daily basis. For 60,000 troops to be moved to the northern border, that is significant. And I think it shows, at the very least, Israel's concern of a wider war up there, and you could stretch that out to say that it is Israel preparing for a wider war up there. Additionally, nearly 100,000 Israelis have so far been evacuated from the northern portion of the country, along with 76,000 Lebanese across the border. So 176,000 total people have been evacuated in that region. That, a couple different ways to look at that. On the one hand, anytime civilians leave a war zone, there's a positive aspect to that because they're not caught in the middle of the fight, and it potentially can lead to the lower civilian casualties. Right? The other side of that is sometimes that opens the door for military forces to move in and conduct the operations that they may not have any civilians in the area. So the 176,000 people that have left that area, left that border region, does give the possibility, does possibly open the door for military action. So my concern, personal opinion here, is kind of twofold. First is that Israel can't stay. We've talked about this before. Israel can't stay where it was. This is significant. It's causing significant harm to their economy. Even if a war is possible, in any way possible with Lebanon, there's going to be people arguing that we have the war right now. We have the soldiers right now. So there are going to be people that side of the really don't arguing now that we're never going to deal with Hezbollah. As crazy as that is, the fact that we have to the second piece there is that air and air defense assets have been used less and less in Gaza over the last few months. So as fewer rockets are fired Israel from Gaza, and that's where they're not even close. The volume of rockets and missiles and drones that Hezbollah has compared to Hamas is not even. And that's one of the major risks of a war with Hezbollah is there's arguments that within the first few hours or even the first few days that they could completely decimate major Israeli cities just based off of the arsenal they have at their disposal. So air defense assets and aircraft are incredibly necessary up north, and over the past few weeks and months, those have been Hezbollah is the only proxy there that does significant pressure. Again, personally, it's not going to be way off this one, but right now you got fighters reducing their operate there. Whether you think that operation has been or will be successful, Hamas is top. Right? They're very focused on surviving day in and day out. Then you've got the U.S. and UK carried out pretty significant strike campaigns against the Houthis down in Yemen, another So when you look at these major Iranian proxies, Islamic Resistance Front, the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah, all of them except Hezbollah have somebody continually striking their facilities where they're trying to operate, kind of decreasing their ability to continue to operate as they hope. That's not necessarily happening with Hezbollah. There are just continued strikes across the border every single day, but it's a lot of launch locations, outposts, things like that. Hezbollah isn't really depleted at all from where they were on October 8th. So if Israel or anybody inside of Israel is looking at the threat from the north and saying, we got to deal with that, we got to reduce the Iranian threat through Hezbollah to the north, Hezbollah is the only one of these entities across the region right now that isn't really facing any pressure. So, again, personal opinion, those all could be arguments for people inside of Israel, leaders inside of Israel, to say the time is now. It's time to escalate this and push it into southern Lebanon. But that's all I got for this. Of course, if you're interested in national security subjects, be sure to check out the description below. We're really experts on board, professional writers, analysts, that put together a lot of pieces complementary to what we're talking about here in these videos, and a free. So that's hard to beat. You know, so you can check it out if interested. I think it's going to be really valuable. Of course, link in the description below.
On the 31st of August, 1939, a 43-year-old man was drugged up to dressed in a Polish uniform, and shot dead in the control room of a radio station outside the town of Gliwice in Upper Silesia.
As you may have seen in some of our other shows, while it may seem a contradiction to some people, in conflicts all sides should follow a set of rules concerning the ethics of warfare. You have likely heard of the Geneva Conventions, which are a set of treaties and protocols that ask countries if they should fight against each other, they should at least try to do that following humanitarian principles. For example, countries should care for the wounded, they should not abuse POWs, they should respect the soldier's religion, and they should not use weapons deemed unfair play on the battleground. And it's the latter which we'll discuss today in this episode of the Infographic Show. Banned weapons in warfare. Blinding laser weapons. We'll start with weapons that sound kind of modern, and these are the tools that could be used to destroy the eyesight of enemies. These types of weapons were banned under Protocol 4 of the 1980 Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, and the protocols covered weapons that could permanently blind someone, not just temporarily dazzle a person. Do such weapons exist? Motherboard wrote in 2014 that indeed, the USA has many lasers that can permanently blind a person, but the country does not use them for that purpose. But sometimes there was a fine line between dazzling and doing much worse. The US media has said China has some very similar technology, calling some weapons blinding lasers. And while no soldiers have been blinded as of yet, the US military has asked if these weapons don't breach the protocols. Landmines. Possibly a soldier's worst nightmare are landmines, explosives which have been used in various war movies to show us just how barbaric war can be. Under the protocol on prohibition or restrictions of the use of mines, booby traps, and other devices, landmines are now at least restricted. Non-detectable anti-personnel mines are not allowed, as are mines that are placed outside fenced areas. According to the UN, a lot of damage is still being done, as there is still so many mines laying around the world. According to an article written by UNICEF, there are around 110 million mines globally that are just waiting for someone to walk over them. There's no date on this article, but it said hundreds of people around the world are still being killed by landmines every year. As for booby traps, you can find lots of articles written about how they were used during the Vietnam War. Thankfully, in conventional warfare, these things are now also banned. Flamethrowers. Another weapon you may have seen in numerous war movies is the flamethrower. These are called incendiary weapons, and they're now banned for certain uses under the Protocol on Prohibitions or Restrictions on the Use of Incendiary Weapons. They're not completely banned, it just depends on what you intend to do with them. You cannot, for example, use them to destroy houses and the people inside the houses. You're not even supposed to use them to burn down forests or even bushes. You can, however, use them for clearing woodland if the land is thought to be hiding combatants or other things related to combat. Historians tell us that all sides during the two world wars were big on using these devices, mostly to do things like digging trenches and holes where soldiers would be hiding. The website The Balance tells us during the Korean and Vietnam Wars, United States Marines also used flamethrowers. In those combat environments, flamethrowers were used to destroy forts, bunkers, and vehicles. They were also used to inflict psychological terror on enemy soldiers who were terrified of being burned alive. Not surprisingly, these weapons were very controversial, and in 1978, the U.S. Senate announced that they were not using them again. The same goes for napalm. It's not completely banned. It can't really be used in warfare to kill people. Cluster bombs. Many countries around the world have signed the Convention on Cluster Munitions Treaty. These are bombs designed to be dropped and then expel a number of smaller bombs, sometimes called bomblets. For this reason, sometimes in the U.S. they got the nickname popcorn bombs or firecrackers. As you can imagine, these things can be a bit unpredictable, and so it's not always easy to judge what will be destroyed. This is the reason many countries have now agreed that they should be used no more. This only happened fairly recently, though, and you can find examples of when these kind of bombs were used by the UK, the US, and many other countries not that long ago. One of the main reasons for trying to stop the use of these things is that those bomblets might remain unexploded, and then one day a very unfortunate civilian comes across one of them. Nerve gas. If any of you have seen the TV show Homeland, you'll know that possibly one of the most critical things in the world is what's known as nerve gas. In that show, the use of sarin, a kind of nerve gas, was explored. While Homeland could be said to be quite implausible at times, how it depicted sarin was by no means over the top. What basically happens when you're hit by the nerve gas is your body malfunctions. Your nervous system stops working. Internal hemorrhaging happens, and death is likely to follow. Before that, you might start foaming at the mouth, suffer convulsions, and then pee and poop yourself. Your organs will then stop working, and that's the end. Mustard gas. This is another nasty chemical agent that does very nasty things to people. You can see what it did by reading about the two world wars. Those that experienced mustard gas poisoning might experience temporary blindness. They might suffer horrible burns on their skin, and their lungs can be severely damaged. If they don't die, soldiers often have to endure horrific pain from severe burns. Nowadays, it's unlikely you'll see the use of this gas, as most countries have ratified the Chemical Weapons Convention. Mustard gas is known as a blister agent, but other gases, such as phosgene gas and hydrogen cyanide, are also banned. Tear gas. You might be surprised to hear that tear gas is banned in war, just because it's still quite regularly used on citizens. It's still a chemical weapon, but it's one of the least harmful weapons of its kind. For that reason, it can still be used to disperse crowds of rioters, but using it on the battleground would be sending a bad message. In a riot, it's believed that this gas can prevent a more deadly or at least aggressive use of force. That's why it's still being used today. Spike pit. It sounds like something John Rambo might come up with, but these pits were used in some conflicts until they were outlawed under the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, also known as punji sticks. They were basically a hole in the ground with some very sharp sticks. The hole was then covered with something so that anyone walking in its direction wouldn't notice anything. When it was stepped on, the soldier would fall into the pit and land on the spikes. This would cause severe pain, and it would be incredibly difficult to get out of this trap. It's also said that sometimes the spikes would be covered with poison or even human feces, so that infection would occur. The point would not be to kill someone, but to maim them and so slow down everyone else. Biological weapons. You may have seen in some of our other shows that militaries all over the world have spent a considerable amount of time trying to invest ways to spread disease among animals, sometimes called germ warfare. We learned about this in the 18th century. The English military were busy trying to spread smallpox to some Native American societies. We are told that with the green lights given by Winston Churchill, tularemia, anthrax, brucellosis, and botulism were made into weapons during World War II. It wasn't only the British, though. France, Germany, the USA, and Japan We're all busy weaponizing disease. You name it, all the leading nations of the world were doing the same thing. At times, weaponizing even the bubonic plague. Thanks to the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention, we hope that those days might be over, although that won't have any effect on the work that terrorists do. We might also add that in the past, such weapons were only designed to hurt people directly, but they were there to save property and livestock. Nuclear bombs. These things were designed to radiate and destroy parts uninhabitable. These did not have a blast, but as I said, just created a lot of radiation over a given area. We're told that they likely wouldn't have caused that much damage, but they instilled fear in communities and so were useful. Bat bombs. We've designated an entire show to these utterly strange things, so you should take a look at that. What these were is what they sound like, which were bats carrying small bombs, designed by the USA to fly over Japan. And there, lots of bats would be released, and each bat would find a safe place to hide down in the city. Many buildings at the time.
Oh my god. I didn't know that. Bat bombs? Fuck out of here. Goddamn bat bomb, bro.
Conventional weapons. You can't exactly control where the bat will go, and you're not allowed to use weapons when you have no idea what the target will be. This could cause untold harm to civilians. Invisible fragments. An entire protocol in the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons is Protocol 1, which restricts weapons with non-detectable fragments. This is simple enough. You can't employ any kind of weapon which might leave bits of itself in another person that cannot be seen, even with X-ray. That means that you're not allowed to make a weapon that leaves plastic in the body, as this can be hard to find. You can use plastic in a weapon's production, but plastic shouldn't be part of the design primarily to hit the person or persons. We should add that many countries have agreed not to use these weapons, but others have not signed the treaties. Some countries have also signed, but done that with what are called reservations. War is always brutal, but there might have been times in history where people have looked back at the weapons we've used in past wars and said, yeah, that was pretty messed up, even by war standards. That's how we got the United Nations Convention on Prohibitions or Restrictions on the Use of Certain Conventional Weapons, which may be deemed to be excessively injurious or have indiscriminate effects, or Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons for short, or CCW for even shorter. The CCW serves to restrict the use of weapons seen as too brutal and too cruel for modern warfare, and anyone caught using these weapons is guilty of war crimes. But considering some of the horrifying weapons militaries have developed and used on one another throughout the thousands of years of human warfare, which weapons did the UN consider a bridge too far? Thankfully, it won't be that hard to find out, as all the banned weapons have been separated into 5 protocols. We'll break down some of these protocols and discuss some of the horrifying reasons each of these rules needed to be made in the first place. Protocol 1 applies to non-detectable fragments. It isn't against the law of war to use some fragmentation weapons. For example, the fragmentation or frag grenade has been a military staple for decades, and it's still common in use among soldiers today. Frag grenades have a very simple core principle. They're made of a metal casing designed to split into smaller pieces of shrapnel, with the explosive force from within the grenade superheating that shrapnel and firing it out in all directions at incredible speed. With some miraculous exceptions, the result of a frag grenade going off next to a human is pretty much always the same. If the explosion doesn't kill them, the massive bodily trauma of being shredded by the shrapnel will lead to a pretty quick death. In the cases of those lucky, or depending on the situation, unlucky enough to survive the blasts, X-rays can be used to detect the fragments so that field medics or surgeons can remove them if possible. In the eyes of the UN, this is all good sport, but Protocol 1 of the CCW removes explosives or ammunition designed to harm its victims through fragments that are impossible to be detected with magnets or X-rays. Some bombs have historically used plastic or glass as their fragmentation element rather than metal. When superheated and fired into the body at great speeds, glass and plastic are just as painful and deadly as metal fragments, but are impossible to detect with an X-ray, and thus are impossible to operate out of a surviving victim. This sets a precedent for the kind of things the CCW forbids. Weapons of war should be designed to kill, not maim and mutilate. Weapons that seem excessively cruel, such as ones that leave survivors in an extended or permanent state of pain and suffering, should not be used. There's another qualifier that sends a weapon into war crime territory, but we'll get into that later. Another weapon banned from warfare by Protocol 1 of the CCW is frangible bullets. These special bullets are designed in some cases to prevent the danger of a ricochet occurring. These bullets are subject to brittle failure, where they disintegrate on impact, becoming countless tiny projectiles rather than manufacturers, Violet Hockey, Allison Smith, Jonathan Abbott, John Hunt, Juan Duchenne, and Patrick Riefenstein. The study states, expanding or fragmenting bullets are designed to inflict significantly more tissue damage than conventional bullets. This type of ammunition is prohibited in international warfare on the basis that it does not serve a military advantage, but can result in excessive wounding and unnecessary suffering. There is no such ban for handgun ammunition for domestic use in most countries, including the United States. Ammunition manufacturers have recently released a fragmenting bullet that's designed to inflict a maximum amount of tissue damage. Two horrifying facts. The bullet being described here is the radically invasive projectile, also known by the sinister acronym with non-shrapnel explosives and bullets on mines, booby traps, and other devices. This protocol is a little more complicated than the first, with some parts regulating rather than outright banning certain weapons. Take, for example, landmines. These weapons are rightly infamous for the roles they played in the First and Second World Wars, as well as during the Vietnam War, where they were responsible for countless cases of deaths and mutilations of unsuspecting soldiers. But soldiers dying in war is sadly part of the job description. It's the effects these weapons have on civilians caught in the crossfire that's led to the UN strictly regulating them. If countries lay landmines during a war, when the conflict ends, they're legally obligated to deactivate and collect these mines to reduce the probability of civilian casualties during peacetime. This falls under the second category we alluded to earlier, if the weapons don't discriminate and are equally likely to injure or kill civilians or combatants. Their use will likely be considered criminal. Anti-personnel mines are also subject to extremely strict regulations, as these mines are specifically designed for use against human combatants rather than vehicles. The purpose must be to kill enemy combatants. Thus, anti-personnel mines that merely wound or disfigure enemy combatants are illegal under Protocol 2. But mines are one thing, booby traps are quite another. The details around this one are particularly horrifying, as the UN lists many specific regulations against the use of booby traps, implying there have been recorded instances of all of them. When you hear the phrase booby traps, you might envision pits full of razor-sharp bougie sticks in the jungles of Vietnam, or maybe Indiana Jones running away from poisoned darts, or a giant golden boulder in some ancient underground tomb. Sadly, the reality is often a lot more gruesome. There are a list of ways that the UN traps be used in warfare. It's illegal to use booby traps as actually internationally recognized protective emblems, signs, or signals. For example, you can't hide a deadly trap
I think so.
in what looks like a Red Cross building. It's illegal to attach booby traps
I don't know.
to sick, wounded, or dead people whom soldiers or humanitarian groups might seek to rescue or retrieve. It's illegal to booby trap burial, grave, and cremation sites, which is an advanced level of not having respect for the dead. It's illegal to booby trap medical facilities, medical equipment, medical supplies, or medical transportation. It's illegal to booby trap children's toys or other portable objects or products specially designed.
What do you mean, getting hot?
Health, hygiene,
It's probably because that door opened earlier.
Let's just take a second to process that, because the idea that there were
Do you want me to warm it up? Okay. But, I mean, it's not going to unless you bump it to 73. Alright, well then, look at it.
Military establishments, military locations, or military supply depots. It's illegal to booby trap objects clearly of a religious nature. Historic monuments, works of art, places of worship which constitute the cultural or spiritual heritage of peoples, and of course, it's illegal to booby trap animals or their carcasses. It's good that these laws are in place, given that if militaries were already doing this, we definitely needed to rein them in. We wish we could tell you things would get less depressing and horrifying from here, but that would be a bald-faced lie. Unless you find people being burned to death whimsical and fun, in which case, please don't take this video as a potential checklist of things you can do once you become a dictator. This is Protocol 3, prohibitions or restrictions on the use of incendiary weapons. That is to say, any weapon that uses fire or heat as their main offensive capability. If you felt the prickle of heat on your skin, please don't expect that to go away why this protocol is a seminal moment in humanity's development. And we here at the Infographic Show speculate it was probably some 20 minutes or so after this discovery that someone was wondering if it could be used to kill people. From fire arrows to fiery projectiles thrown from siege weapons like catapults and trebuchets to the terrifying Roman incendiary weapon known as Greek fire, which was used in rudimentary flamethrowers to burn down enemy ships. Fire has long been used as a tool of war, but these weapons seem positively quaint compared to the horrors of the M2 flamethrower and napalm, used to burn down jungles and enemy combatants during the Vietnam War. Being burned to death is a horrible fate, far more so than being bombed or taking a bullet to the head. But that's if it kills you. You're equally likely to survive your run-in with an incendiary weapon and live the rest of your life experiencing psychological stress. Another problem with incendiary weapons is that fire also tends to spread. Fire doesn't discriminate between the soldier and the civilian, between military installations and innocent homes or forests. It's the reason that the policy of completely annihilating everything that an enemy needs to wage war is known as scorched earth. Incidentally, enacting a scorched earth policy against civilians was also banned by the Geneva Convention in 1977. Strict restrictions are placed on the usage of incendiary weapons under Protocol 3. It's illegal to use incendiary weapons against civilian populations, areas, or objects, including, quote, any weapon or munition which is primarily designed to set fire to objects or to cause burn injury to persons through the action of flame, heat, or a combination thereof, produced by a chemical reaction of a substance delivered on the target. Because of fire's nature to spread uncontrollably, it's also forbidden to air deliver incendiary weapons against military targets in the middle of highly concentrated civilian locations. Funnily enough, there are often strange and curious exceptions to some of these protocols. Take, for example, the UN's repeated attempts and chronic inability to meaningfully regulate thermobaric weapons, or vacuum bombs. These are some of the most deadly explosives out there. They're bombs containing large amounts of incendiary fuel that's released and ignited upon detonation, creating a fiery explosion that sucks the oxygen out of the air to fuel its extremely violent chemical reaction. In other words, you get obliterated while also suffocating. What a treat! These terrifying weapons are not all regulated under the CCW, in what seems to be a perfect example of the regulatory blind spots in the UN's attempts to litigate warfare. This brings us to Protocol 4, blinding laser weapons. Your reaction to that was probably, wait, the military has used blinding laser weapons? To which we say, this will not be the only existential nightmare you experience in this video. While this protocol doesn't prohibit the use of weapons against binoculars, periscopes, telescopes, and other optical equipment, nor can it penalize accidental blinding. The first article lays out, quote, it is prohibited to employ laser weapons specifically designed as their sole combat function, or as one of their combat functions, to cause permanent blindness to unenhanced vision. That is, to the naked eye or to the eye with corrective eyesight devices. This brings us back to the question of what kinds of weapons the UN wanted to regulate with Protocol 4. One of the most prominent and infamous ones was the personnel halting and stimulation response rifle, or laser, because even the engineers tasked with creating cutting-edge weapons for the military are still huge Star Trek nerds. But while the name is fun, the weapon is decidedly less so. It's a laser rifle designed to, quote, temporarily blind the target. But if you crank the power up a bit too high, or if you put it in careless hands, temporary blindness can very quickly become permanent. I think we speak for everyone when we say that here at the Infographics Show, we're kind of relieved that the UN is keeping weapons like this out of warfare. But this next protocol helps to regulate an element of war that can stick around for long after the war itself has ended. Protocol 5, Explosive Remnants of War. We already spoke out about the danger of unexploded landmines, but this protocol hopes to both reinforce that and reduce the harm caused by unexploded cluster bombs. If you aren't familiar with the concept of the cluster bomb, it's a rather infamous weapon that's been used in countless wars since its invention during World War II. The general principle is that a cluster bomb is full of smaller bombs known as submunitions. These fall indiscriminately over the target area, exploding and carpeting a vast swath of land with deadly fire. They're extremely inhumane weapons, capable of just as easily massacring civilians as troops. But even worse, not all the submunitions explode at once. Some remain undetonated and embedded in the land, and at the constant risk of exploding or injuring civilians. It's really no question as to why the UN would have problems with them and seek to remedy their effects with litigation. Of course, the CCW isn't the only set of international laws forbidding the use of certain weapons in warfare. Before we think about the dark potential futures of warfare, let's take a quick look at a disturbing grab bag of other banned weapons. First, poison bullets. First invented and pioneered pioneered by the one and only Leonardo da Vinci, as ballistic shells filled with sulfur and arsenic. These were some of the first weapons ever barred by an agreement between nations, the Strasbourg Agreement of 1675 between Rome and France. Not that this stopped any other nations from trying later, as the U.S. military experimented with lacing bullets with the deadly toxin ricin during World War I. This idea thankfully never caught on. Later, the Geneva Convention forbade the use of chemical weapons and poison gas under the CWC, or Chemical Weapons Convention. Three particular chemical weapons that have been restricted are the nerve agent Novichok, the previously mentioned poison ricin, and the infamous sarin gas, which Syria was sanctioned for using on its own people during the Syrian civil war, despite signing the CWC in 2013. But what about biological weapons? Bioweapons aren't just exclusive to Resident Evil villains. They've been a mainstay of hundreds of different armies across millennia. Genghis Khan and the Mongols used corpses to spread disease among their enemies. Centuries later, armies in Europe during the Middle Ages catapulted the corpses of dead animals into the fortresses they were sieging, getting the people trapped inside dangerously sick. Centuries later, Europeans colonizing North America used blankets infected with smallpox to murder scores of Native Americans. Even as recently as Vietnam, the Viet Cong coated their punji sticks with human feces, making the injuries they caused extra infectious. Naturally, with our increasing understanding of the destructive potential for viral and germ warfare, it's understandable that the 1972 Biological Weapons Convention was created to prevent movies like Contagion and 28 Days Later from becoming documentaries. And of course, there are dirty bombs, a weapon whose mere mention can cause heart rates to spike. Dirty bombs fuse the worst parts of a conventional and nuclear explosive. It's a conventional bomb laced with nuclear material, essentially making it a distribution system for radiation that will sicken and kill indiscriminately over a wide area, potentially irradiating said area for decades, centuries, or even millennia to come. It's also, incidentally, a lot easier to make than a standard nuclear weapon, which is why the world's nations are often a lot more worried about terrorists making them than whole countries with access to full-on nuclear warheads and the means to launch them. We've looked at the horrors of wars past that the international community has tried to prevent from repeating themselves, but weapons developments move a lot faster than international conflict legislation. That's why many have suggested a potential future Protocol 6, lethal autonomous weapons, aka Skynet-style killer robots. Yep, that's right, the UN is fully expecting weapons companies to start investing in and manufacturing autonomous weapons systems, and they're just hoping to get ahead of the curve. Hopefully it won't take a few autonomous weapons atrocities to get those laws passed. Ancient warfare, generally an old-school affair where armies face off on the battlefield with weapons and armor, and occasionally something much larger, sometimes seaborne, and sometimes alive. Here are 10 of the most insane ancient superweapons you might never have heard of. Number 10, the Juga crossbow. In ancient times, projectiles were still an important part of warfare, but those using them were usually limited to simple weapons like slings and crossbows. While they could deliver a fatal blow, they weren't exactly efficient. The user had to wind up the weapon or align the crossbow, aim carefully, let loose, and then reload. If they were up against a single enemy or a key target, it could be effective. If they were up against an army, the weapon will likely be overrun sooner than later. That was high on the minds of military strategists during the Warring States era of Chinese history, more than 2,000 years ago. So they created what might be the first semi-automatic weapon in history, the repeating crossbow, which could fire several shots in quick succession. While traditional crossbows rely heavily on precision and crossbow propelling forward, these weapons pack much less force. Their strength is that the action of spanning the bow and placing the bolt and shooting is confined into one movement, making it easier to fire in quick succession. All that's needed is to move the sliding lever back and forth while holding the pistol grip. It fires from the hip as the lever is pumped forward and back. It's an ancient speed, but the early examples found in Chinese archaeological digs were lacking in precision or strength. It would likely be able to deliver pressure points rather than fickle arrow wheels. This led many to believe it was more of a minor defense weapon than a true tool of war. But these weapons might have had a sinister projectile, right? You load it up, you cut the rope, and it's flung hard enough to break down a rock wall. But that's nothing compared to the trebuchet, which was the most powerful projectile weapon before the invention of the gun. Designed to use another way to projectiles much easier than a traditional catapult. It all started with the traction trebuchet in ancient China around 2,500 years ago. 1755, the front arm of it was 30 feet like a python man. Lots of it. Actually, the trebuchet beam, and when released, this created a massive rotational force that would propel the projectile further than would be possible with adopted by China after they encountered it in a battle with the Mongols. The cavalry trebuchet used usually filled with rocks or sand. When attached to the shorter end of the beam and released on command, it does but as weapons evolve, incendiary weapons that could set a city on fire were also loaded into the basket and fired. For those willing to fight dirty, they those were corpses of soldiers killed in battle and seized and constantly into the city with deadly disease. While the weapon declined in use once the gun was invented, it needs a giant machine to light things with just light a fuse, right? It's one of the only weapons on this list that's still recreated frequently today. Recreations have been built around the world, and even in today's world of modern weapons, it has much. But sometimes you need to have something a little more light. Number 8, war weapons. For steeds in combat, can't do much better than train. But the for knocking down and claws, sometimes you need a bit more muscle. Like the largest land that will run that's incredibly strong. The bonus thing see how they do the amazing weapon. There's just one problem.
Good night. Alright, I love you too. Good night. Oh. Tickle me Elmo. Tickle me Elmo.
No matter how much I drink, nothing.
Nothing works.
Come out when it's ready, I guess.
Well-trained elephants in combat, so often they attempt specialized blades with tusks to give them an even nastier edge in combat. But working with the giant beasts having its downside. Elephants are the first things, but most things don't get sweet decent. One elephant's getting startled with these stampede, putting into a derailed charge for a run. But they were connected for long distance military marches. Most famously, crossing the Alps is more against the gun. Between the difficulty training elephants and the rarity animals, many of their tusks and highly endangered. Military elephants became increasingly rare. Technology advanced. By the 20th century, they were rare, but they hadn't been in the Second World War. They used to tow airplanes to other heavy-duty tasks in Asia. They saw it in use as late as the War. This next fiery weapon was way ahead of its time. Number 7, Greek fire. Your board ship carries you're about to run into your dreaded enemy. The ships of the they've got some aerial forces, but more men are well trained and ready to take on their conventional weapons. But this time they're not armed with conventional weapons. They're packing Greek fire, and suddenly they pull out a cannon that fires first like a massive golden flame. Beginning with the ship and sending even before it sends the pump to the sea. Was this a strange case of time travel, or something future they had a flamethrower to keep them from losing a key battle? Nope, just good old-fashioned chemistry. Actually, is Greek fire Street fire was one that extensively used the era. The chemical compound. This controlled fire not only worked with a flamethrower, but there were rumors it could stay in fire even on water, making it impossible to steer away easily. This led to modern speculation that it could have been made of components including naphtha, quicklime, and pine resin. While it was typically deployed through large carry projectors, there were also drawings of small handheld projectors. What could go wrong with giving each soldier on the boat their own personal flamethrower? It was also placed in the elastics of the drum, just like an ancient grenade.
That's weak.
Number 6, fireworks. There's nothing like watching that midair. Sometimes if you're lucky, you get to watch that multi-stage go off. Is it dazzling? It's all fun and games until that rocket's coming straight for you. When packed with more gunpowder and fire, it becomes a powerful weapon, as well as going down in history as the first form of ballistic missile. They started in the world capital of ahead of their time weapons, China. It was the 14th century when the full-blown Shui was first recorded. It's well known that they had fireworks and gunpowder by then. Well, rockets was sophisticated rockets that delivered on one stage, and they didn't just deliver a blow. They delivered some great aesthetics too. The world-renowned Shui looked a lot like modern rockets, about 5 feet long, and was made of a bamboo tube. But they wanted to send a message, so the rocket was given an ornately carved dragon head and tail. For when warships. The KvKGsG put the Romans to the test, and they also taught them a thing or two. Once the Romans marched on the Greece, they started building their own naval armies. By the 4th century, these powerful wooden ships were among the largest ever to set sail, and must have looked more like massive cruise ships rather than standard warships. Without modern engines to power them, these warships used old-fashioned methods, oars, and lots of them. Filled with 5 weapons, some more than 3 very long oars sticking out to the side of the ship, with one oarsman bringing their back for each oar. These ships could carry large numbers of soldiers, but they were often hard to navigate and were subject to going off course easily. They looked impressive, but they weren't the most effective warships of the era. That honor went to the smaller warships that would come later, often known as lembos. They required fewer oars and more support to drive them, and were more effective for stealth-based activities like espionage and piracy, while the massive earlier ships could be effective for storming the port. These small ships could sneak up behind their fleet's counterparts with the same agents or sabotage the ship from within. Some of those massive warships turned smaller other ships, backed by rowers and rowers pushing themselves to the limit. They could simply crash into an inferior navy, crush the ships beneath their hull, fire on the part of the but perhaps the most impressive innovations in ancient warfare were siege towers. City-states had built the best way to launch attacks. Massive walls the only way to locked in, sure, the destroyed Permadeath and fell the subterfuge. Giant cities didn't force plans, only work ones, so usually the only way to make this through combat. But the people behind the walled city usually had a major advantage over those out in the open, shooting at them from the outside. The real strategy was usually climbing the walls, occasionally got hot oil. So around the 11th century BC, the Babylonians and Assyrians came up with a new strategy: build a fortress of your own. Siege towers were massive. At Weapons of Archimedes. Across ancient Greece and became historically noted Archimedes, a mathematician, physicist, engineer, and inventor. He was the Da Vinci of his era, responsible for inventing many of the core concepts of advanced math, much to the dismay of many schoolchildren. He invented countless bold concepts. Some of his inventions, like astronomical instruments, are still used today.
Oh my God.
Just crazy experiments that never really panned out.
Another one? That's insane.
But did they actually work? First was the claw. It was like something from science fiction. It was designed to defend the city wall of Syracuse against warships. While early descriptions were made, most historians believe it was a crane equipped with a grappling hook that attached to a part of the ship. It could raise, raising the ship with it, and sending it through the air high into the ocean below. The claw of Archimedes may have been
Hey, jackass, can I lighten that backpack up for you?
routed, courtesy of the weapon known as the Iron Hand. But was another invention even more deadly? The fear of Archimedes was not the vanity device the famous scientist used in his private quarters. Rather, his sketches and notes indicated that
Either jackass, can I lighten up that load for you?
Well, how about you browse your ass right out of my store?
How about you browse your ass right out of my store? Yeah. Excuse me.
villain was Nazi leader Adolf Hitler. And many others were really built or planned by scientists. What was the Wunderwaffe? The secret German program of wonder weapons? It was 1942 when the Nazi war machine was flagging. The United States had entered the war. The United Kingdom was stubbornly refusing to fall. And Hitler had the brilliant idea of invading Russia, which meant the German army now had to fight a war on two fronts. The morale of the military was fading. Hitler was devoting more and more resources toward targeting German citizens. Even many of his own generals were starting to whisper, was the Führer losing his marbles? Did Germany need a change in leadership? Naturally, that meant there was only one thing to do: turn up the propaganda. Led by Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda industry started putting out news that would help turn the tide of the war. Because Germany's scientists were on the case, and they were designing a whole new crop of Wunderwaffe, or wonder weapons, that the world had never seen before. These weapons, straight out of science fiction in some cases, were said to pack a power the world has never seen. 3 years before the first atomic bombs were perfected, these secret weapons were said to turn the tide of any war and send the enemy running. So was there any truth to these announcements? And usually the answer is yes and no. The Germans take back having top secret weapons program, and it was led by some of the world's best scientists. Men like Werner von Braun, the aerospace engineer who was later taken out of Germany by the United States, became one that heads of the space program, regularly presented Hitler with blueprints for wildly ambitious weapons. The only thing standing between Germany and unleashing these beasts on the battlefield was a lack of time and money, and Hitler was more than willing to give both of these to the Wunderwaffe program, and the results were impressive, at least on paper. The Wunderwaffe program went for quantity over quality in many cases, and they delivered designs and prototypes for countless new weapons. Self-delivered.
Don't let the door hit you on your way out.
Others were created for the Germany ran out of time before it became a reality. Yet others turned into complete and total disasters that we still marvel at today. Let's crack open the secret files of the Wunderwaffe and see which implementation succeeded and which terrified even Hitler. Germany had an impressive navy, but they were far behind the Allied powers in one area: aircraft carriers. Hitler wanted to expand Germany's navy far beyond Europe, and to do that, they needed much more capacity. So they commissioned the Round 7, a massive carrier that could carry over 30 fighter planes and 9 bombers. It was one of the earliest Wunderwaffe projects, beginning construction in 1936. It was still under construction in 1945. Germany's defeat in Kiel, the ship was deliberately sunk to avoid it falling into enemy hands. It was later salvaged and used for weapons tests by the Soviets, a far cry from the powerhouse it was intended to be. But it wasn't the most impressive aircraft carrier in the Nazis' plans. The German ocean carrier was an impressive ship, the largest in the area. After losing a key battleship in 1941, the German Navy needed an aircraft carrier they could use quickly. So they came up with the idea, why not turn the cruise ship into a carrier? The largest of the vessels was chosen for conversion. The Europa was redesigned for the German aircraft carrier 1, and big plans were developed to convert it. And that's all they began plans. Soon after the process began, there were serious structural weaknesses. It wasn't meant to carry airplanes. It wound up carrying troops after it was seized by the United States. If there was one thing the Wunderwaffe program loved, it was large ships. It was called Plan Z. The plan came spelling in 1939. Plans were always ambitious, but never quite panned out. And that included the H-class battleships. Never heard of the H-class battleships? That's because they were designed to be by far the largest the German Navy had ever seen, with 6 ships loaded with massive guns and reinforced deck armor. Ironically, what spelled their end was the very thing they were designed for: World War II. The Navy's focus was to retrofitting existing ships into H-class battleships faded off into the seas of fantasy. But one section of the German Navy got much more attention. The U-boat was the seas as the German submarines sank countless Allied ships, but Hitler wanted them to be faster, stronger, and deadlier. Countless new model order boats started with the modern U-boat. Most U-boats use standard torpedoes, but these blueprints intended to replace that with higher powered rockets and missiles. This would allow the Germans to not only sink enemy ships more effectively, but potentially launch attacks directly into the United States from the sea. The first tests were promising, but the lack of a guidance system that could detonate them ultimately brought the U-boat wasn't ready for combat by the time the war ended. But the scientists continued to refine them for hunters. A constant quest to upgrade the U-boat, and some got closer than others. The biggest challenge of using submarines in combat was that they were fundamentally stable. Pushed along the surface and only submerged for short periods at a time. The Type 51 submarine came to change that, being the first ships to operate primarily underwater and only leaving the surface for charging. Prototypes worked, and they were put to production in a hurry. Over 100 were completed, and 2 were put to into service, but at that point, the sea war of the European front was all but over. Neither ship saw it coming, but the design was impressive enough that both the U.S. and USSR built on it in the future. But the designs that were meant for the surface
Oh, whatever, bitch.
were strange. It might sound like a common line of noodle puddings, but the World War II reality was much different. A plane used a self-propelled gun attached to tanks had the ability to shoot down enemy planes from the ground. The first model had an enclosed rotating turret that would give it far greater maneuverability. The plans were approved to move into the prototype phase, but that's where the project concluded. As the war ended, only a few test vehicles had been completed. The only surviving turret stands on display at a German army museum. But to take down tanks, the German army had some bigger guns. Literally. A rare example of a Wunderwaffe weapon that actually saw combat. The Studer E-Mill anti-tank gun was an impressive beast. It could carry 15 rounds and move in tank effectively. The tank was always adjusted for a standard heavy ballistic balance. The barrel and 2 models were completed and sent to the field. Named after Max and Moritz, a pair of German storybook characters, they both fell in combat, with Max being destroyed and Moritz being captured by the Soviets, placed on display at the KvKGsG Museum. And to carry an heavy tank, the German heavy tank programs cracked down powerful weapons, but they wanted to go bigger. The largest tank at the time, the Panzer VII. However, the planned land cruiser was going to weigh a whopping 1,000 tons. Its armor would be almost 10 inches thick and covered with anti-aircraft guns, along with a gun turret harvested from a battleship. Hitler was impressed with the wild ambition of the project and greenlit all of the making of destroyed weapons. However, Minister of Armaments Albert Speer saw it for what it was, a massive money pit, and canceled the project in 1943 before it was built. More effective, although the building was never captured by the Soviet forces. But it wasn't used for some untamed Nazi planes. It was simply a tumbleweed rolling down the planes, but that tumbleweed was made of metal instead. The Nazis designed a bizarre rolling tank known as the KvKGsG as part of the Wunderwaffe program, but the field left more questions than it answered. It didn't have any weapons attached, and it seemed that much combat use had certainly become a star exhibit. Military gliders were one of the most important parts of warfare, getting troops and supplies to where they were needed most. The Junkers Ju-332 Mahmoud was the largest glider the Germans tried to build. There was a hitch to the plane. It was supposed to be built out of non-strategic material made the war effort, so the German Luftwaffe would. Well before its planned destination had to be towed back. Its eventual fate being cut up for fuel. One area of the German weapons program got more attention than any other. It was a constant frustration for Hitler. For all the German army's strength, he was sorely lacking in air power. So long-range war before the last few decades, the Air Force was dwarfed by the United States and Japan. Aerial combat against Great Britain, with their planes more capable of striking further off targets or getting involved in the Pacific theater. The Wunderwaffe program changed that, and their program had an indoor base name, America Bomber. Basically punched out what this thing was intended to do. Thus, the Germans wanted a long-range weapon capable of delivering a full-on attack against East Coast American cities, especially New York, which Hitler fantasized about destroying. The German Air Ministry gathered several of the country's best aircraft designers to submit their design of this plane that could deliver a shocking punch to the U.S. on their home front. Results were mixed. Ultimately, 2 designs stood out from the crowd and were destined for production. The first, Messerschmitt MT-264, was a long-range strategic bomber for the Luftwaffe. It was an all-metal heavy bomber similar in design to the B-52, but had relatively little in the way of armor and guns, so it could carry more bombs. 3 prototypes were built and overall impressed the brass of the German.
Not the one you with.
thousands to a dead standstill on the field. However, barbed wire could also be used to funnel enemy soldiers into massive killing fields, and this is where it really got its most deadly. Machine guns and artillery could only zero in on a three-point killing field, making them deadly accurate against advanced enemy infantry. An account from the Battle of Sono highlights how deadly barbed wire can become. Extreme users who can't reach their own wire, wore well-laid belts and all, and to follow Zinzinic claims between pre-cut gaps, which had been exactly pinpointed by German machine gunners. Those who managed to get through those gaps and across 500 yards of open ground exposed to German positions. Those new commanders who had reached the German wire were shot down as they tried to cut their way through it with their wire cutters. Both sides came up with attempts to defeat barbed wire, one of which was to use soldiers. However, one of those efforts stumbled into success. Completely entangled you are you also lacerated and all your flesh. Hopelessly stuck, your only hope is that your side won the engagement and a rescue party could come later and help you out. Or you can take your chances simply tearing free of the stuff, an extremely unenviable proposition. The Bangalore War torpedo was also developed as a way of defeating barbed wire. It consisted of a series of armed torpedoes in the pipe, which can be screwed together with explosives. Then the entire assembly was shoved on the wire and fused. The resulting explosion clear a 5-foot path around the stuff. However, this meant that you would be exposed to heavy fire the entire time you were using a simple torpedo, waiting for the fuse to go off. It was the development of the deadliest weapons of World War II that led to the end of barbed wire's reign as one of the most feared tools on the battlefield. While barbed wire would continue to be used throughout World War II to protect defensive positions, the tank with its thick armor and wide treads would easily smash through the sky. Thus, the use of barbed wire dropped steeply after World War I, though it remains in use around the world for its excellent anti-personnel properties. It just isn't as effective as it once was thanks to the proliferation of armored vehicles. Our next deadliest weapon would have its infancy in World War I, but would be responsible for almost knocking the entire fighting out of the war before it could reach World War II, the airplane. Almost from the advent of powered flight, it's its potential for war, but it was used for its true position in the sky. Hot air balloons, but the advent of fast moving platform vehicles out of the bird's eye view of a battlefield proved to be an absolute game changer. Just not the killing. Valuable information can be passed along to the artillery corps and used to destroy enemy supply depots and command posts, not visible to scouts on the ground or operating from stationary positions. It was at the First Battle of Mont when the airplane first proved itself an exceptionally valuable tool for any military and prompted the need to defend one's own skies against enemy weapons. During this battle, Allied reconnaissance planes were able to spot a gap in the German lines that was not visible from the ground. The Allies soon massed an attack against this gap and succeeded in splitting the German lines, forcing them to retreat or be overwhelmed. It was clear that the airplane was necessary for modern war, and that it was just as necessary to keep the friendly skies clear of them. The first scout planes had no armaments, and instead, pilots would engage in shootouts with each other with revolvers. With the pressing need to destroy enemy scout aircraft, engineers on both sides of the lines worked to develop armament that could be fitted on an airplane that had the ability to shoot enemy planes into the sky. The first such weapons consisted of carefully timed machine guns that were directly linked to the plane's propeller, and thus could shoot through the rapidly spinning blades with no damage. These were known as synchronization gears. The first synchronization gear to enter service was fitted on the German Hawker Heidegger fighter, and most reliable. Gradually, the technology improved to the point that fewer and fewer pilots were shooting their own propellers off. It wouldn't be until the 1930s that these types of machine guns would go on to style on-scope machine guns that could now attack and destroy each other effectively, keeping nosy enemy scouts from getting a good fix on the troops down below. However, on top of this, from the onset of powered flight, it also became obvious that the airplane could be an excellent tool for dropping bombs on the enemy with far greater accuracy than artillery. However, this would become a factor for most of the war due to the technological limitations of early advancement. In place of bombs, some planes carried great loads of sharp wood darts that were light enough to allow a plane to carry hundreds of them at a time. However, the darts were completely limited in their effectiveness was limited. They succeeded in using rapid and the French used them all the way to the end of the war. Early planes were able to carry some explosives, but only to drop them from low altitudes. massive fleet of aircraft carriers instead of investing in slow, inaccurate battleships. In Europe, though, Germany also proved how deadly the air tank had become by brilliantly incorporating it into its blitzkrieg strategy. Air attacks would overwhelm enemy defenses with aerial bombardment, and the war even saw the airplane used as direct fire support for troops on the ground. Dive bombers were very effective for destroying enemy tanks with pinpoint accuracy, and few were as feared as the Junkers JU-87 or Stuka. They even came equipped with an air siren, which would let out a horrifying wail as the plane dove on a target, further demoralizing the men on the ground. Fighters equipped with heavy machine guns and great precision and destroyed armored vehicles with far greater accuracy than
Oh, look who it is. Fucking joining the game. Yeah. So weird how he joins my game every fucking time.
Thus, in April 1915, Germany debuted the use of chlorine gas against the Allied lines. The gas is denser than air, meaning it would settle in low areas and cool on the ground, perfect for infiltrating infiltration. Also, after that, at low doses, it causes coughing, vomiting, and extreme eye irritation. However, unprotected soldiers could inhale the gas, after which it would react with the water inside their lungs, creating hydrochloric acid. Logistics first use estimated 11 hundred soldiers were killed, but the gas was so surprisingly effective that the Germans were ready to exploit the situation. Chlorine gas, for starters, its odor and relatively easy to spot, giving sharp-eyed soldiers a chance to quickly don protective gear. The gas was also water-soluble, so a simple wet brush over the mouth and nose was enough to protect the soldier. That's the German disrupting the blood-air barrier and causing suffocation. Highly effective, the gas is thought to be responsible for up to 85% of the 99,000 gas deaths in conflict. Gas after exposure is usually up to 2 days to cause a death through buildup of fluid in the lungs. For at least 1 of those days, soldiers could still put up some resistance, making it unsuitable for preparatory bombardments. The most common gas used in World War I was mustard gas, so-called for its mustard color. While in pure form it's colorless, impure forms of the gas were widely used in World War I. It has distinct coloring and an odor similar to garlic or horseradish. The gas was not commonly deadly in the southern inhale barge fire, though it was because of contact with oxygen, so it caused large blisters with yellowish fluids. Fighting difficult for those injured. The blisters opened up for serious infections in sanitary training. As they suffered then the second deadlier gas could be introduced, unprotected soldiers bleeding to death. Ironically, gases were banned by the Hague Convention of 1899, though two obviously gases would be less deadly than the ordinary right dosage of approach to 1 to 2% of casualties in World War I. The more extremely effective heterogens less severe, more or less dangerous. Still, they were banned at any latitude.
You gonna learn to get off my game, boy. Alright, we're gonna switch games. Tired of playing that shit. Plus, I can't never get down. Nobody would fucking let me play my game in peace. So, they wouldn't come in there and steal all my loot. I'm not stupid. I know what you're doing, bro. Alright. I'll see y'all in a minute. About to do After Dark now. It's 12:30. So, thank y'all for tuning in. We'll be right back. So, keep it tuned right here.